This video is brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace is the all-in-one platform to grow your beautiful online presence and run your business, and I love Squarespace. I started using them about 4 years ago when I created my blog, tomward.com, and the site looked so good and it was so well produced that it actually ended up getting me a writing gig at Forbes. So you never know where a website will take you. And the reason I chose Squarespace and why I like it so much and still use it today, first of all, is their design. It looks incredible. I think a Squarespace site looks better than any other platform out there. They make it so easy to drop in content, whether it's video, audio like a podcast, even a picture. They make it look great. They also help you grow your subscriber list. Email marketing is very important, especially when you have a site. And I used to have a third party manage it, and it would never sync up right, and I would lose a lot of subscribers that way. Now it's integrated in Squarespace, so they make it so easy to manage. And finally, the analytics. Squarespace gives you, you want analytics, they got it for you. They drill down so deep and they give you the data you need to run your site. So check them out, squarespace.com/TomWard to get 10% off your first order. Go check them out. Thanks, guys.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Zack King. I just did an interview with Tom Ward, so you can check it out now. It's posted, it's published, it's live. I swipe up.
So I'm sitting here with Zack King. We had a little technical glitch, but we're back. I feel comfortable.
We are back. We're not going to have any buffering issues.
You're good.
Tom,
Actually, you did a video like that.
I did. Yes, it's we've done a lot of work from home concepts now. So these technical glitches, I like to make fun of them and do like little magic spins on how we'd solve them.
Well, I've been obsessively watching your videos for the last 2 days, kind of prepping for this. And I want to include a montage in case people who live under a rock don't know who you are. But some of my favorites were the Banksy piece, the spray paint ladder one.
Yes, I loved it.
The Starbucks app one, which
everybody wishes that was real, that you could pass like the coffee through the tablet.
And then it had the little twist at the end when he tries to return the coffee.
Getting splashed all over. That was my car we shot in, and it got splashed everywhere. I'm cleaning up little dabs of coffee here.
The glass half full one, which again, I have no idea how you do this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And my favorite was the one, a little pun when you fall into a pool on a pool table.
Yeah, I love it. I get a lot of those visual puns, from the style of Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin, and I love when it can be a language joke, but also just visually, like that would be cool if a pool table was an actual pool.
Well, I read somewhere that you said a good video, it's not just about the trick. The trick's part of it, but it's more about the story.
Oh, absolutely.
I didn't know can you elaborate? I didn't know what you meant by that.
Yeah, so I grew up doing classical magic. My grandfather got me into magic many years ago, and he would take me around. I was from Portland, Oregon. He would take me around the Pacific Northwest. We'd drive all the way up to like Tacoma, Washington, Seattle, and go to these magic conventions. And it was partly I was up there to go perform, but I was usually like 90% of the time going to these things to learn or actually buy. It was kind of funny. You'd meet with these magicians and they'd take you to a back room and they'd show you the trick, before you purchase, like what you'd get, but not revealing everything. And we'd buy these magic tricks and I'd go home and practice for another 2 months and go back and perform somewhere. But over the years, I fell in love with filmmaking, and when I was in high school, I kind of dropped magic because it takes so much time. I mean, it's an art form. You have to practice. There's technique and many hours. And I was ultimately more into filmmaking at the time, so I was putting my time into that. But around the time Vine came around a couple of years ago, I saw it as an opportunity to make these 6-second videos, and the theme of magic kind of came back from my childhood. I was like, well, what's the fun? Like, everyone loves magic. I used to do magic. I could do, I was thinking I could do the practical tricks, but at the time I was down doing the visual effects route from film school, and that's what I was toying with and as a hobby and quite seriously at the time. It came full circle with the magic, but I didn't want to turn the white handkerchief into a dove because that was always kind of just, it didn't have that story element. And so for me, that's the fun of my job now, is figuring out like why something would happen the way. Like I'm engineering a trick right now where I don't know if a lot of people have doggy doors anymore, but I used to have one growing up, and we'd let the dog out through that little hole in the door.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, well, if a cool technique is crawling through the doggy door and turning into a dog wearing the same clothes and kind of the same body size, and I think it'd just be funny. But at the end of the day, we don't shoot the videos unless they have a story element. So now I'm in the phase of like, do my keys get locked out of the house? Do you see me lift up the mat and the key's not there and I have to crawl in, or am I robbing the place, or is a robber doing that and that happens to him? So like I'll hone in on that story with the team, and then it'll feel right. Like now we can shoot it. It can't be back in the day. It really was. I started and it was like, oh, it's a fun trick. Like take this and that and combine it. And it was a cool visual. But over the years, I've learned what keeps the audience coming back for more is like, how is the magic going to be used to solve the everyday problem? Or what's the element, there's these little story nuggets that have to be in there, and you can cleverly put them in. And to me, that's what's fun about making them.
Yeah, and you were successful in the beginning just doing the trick thing.
Yeah.
Like you said, I didn't have the story, I didn't figure it out. Well, you were you were wildly successful just doing it that way, right? You had videos blow up in the beginning. And what made you kind of change? Like if that was working, why?
I think it was a natural progression. And there probably isn't like you can't. I don't think you can go back and say like this is the moment it changed, but you
Sure.
saw it start to evolve where we test like, oh, it's actually the story. I mean, pretty early on, the tricks weren't always random, but they did. If I go back now, I watch them and I'm like, oh, it doesn't seem like. Why was I said in the beginning? I would always the thing that has changed is I would always visually or use audio. I would say like, this is how I do a thing, or this is how and people actually used to parody that for a while. And I realized it's actually not strong. This is when I went back to Charlie Chaplin. I realized there was no dialogue with the silent films in the 1920s. Like they were having to use, and Charlie and Buster were actually in a competition with each other to who could use the least amount of those title cards that would say like, come back to me, whatever the text. And so I realized a great story it could be told in all visuals. And so I think that you do see a change somewhere around the end of Vine where I actually stopped saying, this is how I do a thing, or, and if I need to talk now, it's usually pretty thought out and why we need to, it's something we can't explain without a visual, or it's re-emphasizing, because it's actually funny, similar to silent film days. Like they had no sound, but the stats are like 60% of people watching my videos and most videos from their phones aren't playing sound anyway.
Well, what does that mean? Does that mean they're watching them on TikTok with the sound off, or
yeah,
Instagram with the sound off?
It means they're watching them in class. They're watching them scrolling. And I've done it where you're with a group of friends and you're watching a movie, and my wife and I will do it. You'll be scrolling Instagram, and some of the defaults on our phones is no sound on when you log onto the platform. So yeah, most people, like from that opening frame, while we do include sound and we have dialogue, like it's got to be reinforced visually. And I think that's the fun of engineering what I do. Like can the frame from the get-go explain half of the story?
It's funny. And like what I do, I realized that a while ago, like if I post a clip of this interview on Instagram, I would just post the clip. And then after a while, I'm thinking, wait, when I go through Instagram, I almost never have the sound on. So how do they know what Zack's saying? So now you have to think about that, and you have to put the captions at the bottom. So,
Yep.
Thinking ahead. Your stats are ridiculous on social, right? It's funny where you started, you're a YouTuber, right? Everything comes from that, but your followings on TikTok and Instagram are staggering.
It's like the lowest following I have.
Yeah.
Is on YouTube, which is so funny because I've been on that platform the longest. We just recently started growing the YouTube channel again, kind of intentionally, because it never was. YouTube the algorithm never supported short form, and it still doesn't to this day. If I post a 30-second video, it's just not going to go viral like a 6-minute video. That's not what their audience is for. And so I never really felt like even though I call myself a YouTuber, or like that's my roots, and I'll always love that platform. And they gave me my start too. Like there was this grant system back in this is before they had like a partner program because they were trying to keep creators on the page. A few years after YouTube launched, and they were giving grants out. It was called the YouTube Next Up program, and I randomly was shared it by a friend or saw it online, and I applied, and I showed them my channel, what I was doing, and they were like, yeah, here's, I think it was $35,000, which, and I was in college, so I was like,
Wow.
I like, it was bank and there was no strings
Wow.
attached. It was just like, hey, come to this 1 week camp in New York, learn from other YouTubers of how they're doing it, get enrolled in our partner program, and spend the money on whatever you want. But like, I spent it all on production, and pretty much that's all of it. There was 25 of us in the group. We all spent it on production because we were at the time still like everything we made from the last video is going into the next video and so
Sure.
forth. So it really helped give us, it kind of gave me a solid year runway to make it a full-time thing and figure that out. And so because of that, I'm so grateful because YouTube, out of all the platforms, has really invested in their creators financially. And so I think I'll always resonate and call myself a YouTuber, and that's where I started. But it's funny that, yeah, the homes where I find my content living, whether it's Instagram or Vine, was a big one, and now TikTok, the followings are just, they don't compare to YouTube. It's
I'm looking
different.
at here, 23 million on Instagram, and the insane one is 43 million on TikTok. You're the king of TikTok, right? It's Charlie, Lauren, and then you. It's like, which one doesn't belong?
It's insane. And I guess I'm the only one that doesn't do,
You don't
dance
dance?
moves. I've never, I don't think I've ever attempted. I don't know if I will. Maybe I'll have to try it once. That could be fun. Do a trick where it
Yeah.
wasn't even me dancing. It was actually, maybe it was Charlie or something. It's a costume reveal.
Or do you with your
But
kids or something?
do it with the kids. Yeah, there's two kids stacked on top of each other. Um, but yeah, no, but what I love about that is, TikTok is a place where, to me, it's anyone's game. It's kind of leveled the playing field, and it gets people from the consumption mode where they're scrolling. They're like, actually, I think I could try this. And that's, even though like I have nothing against the dance moves, but or the dancers, but I think that's the first iteration we're seeing where it's trends and content that anyone thinks they can do, and it's approachable, and that's what I love about it. Like the fact that even my sister just signed up during quarantine she was like, had extra time, and she's like, what is this thing? And oh, I could try this, and that's super cool. I'm glad it gets people from consumption to creating, and that's my ultimate goal for it. But I love that, while we're on the top charts right now on TikTok, hopefully that shows people like our stuff is really different, that you can still be really successful and at near the top by doing something that's totally left field. You don't have to do what everyone else is doing. And in fact, I think in the long tail of it, that's where people are going to find their strength is figuring out their niche and really owning that.
Well, it's funny because I interviewed a bunch of big TikTokers. I did Addison Ray, I
Mhm.
did Chase and the guys at the Hype House, and then I did the Sway House. And I know more about TikTok than any 40-year-old guy should probably know. But it's funny when I was asking them, because their viewers all want to be, they're aspiring TikTokers and they want to grow too. And I asked them that, and every one of them said, follow the trends and kind of put your little spin on it. So you're saying the exact opposite is, you know what, maybe that'll get you a little following now, but you've had longevity. The girl dancing today who's hot today might not be there in a year, but you've proven your content's evergreen, right? The song doesn't get old, or too many people didn't play out the song. You're constantly evolving. So I think that's what really makes you, not just the content, but I think that's what makes you different than the Instagram star today or the TikTok star today.
And they'll figure it out. They're doing it. I've had there's pros and cons to it. I've had the slow growth where, right now on TikTok, it absolutely is, it is massive. And I kind of still pinch myself of like, is this real? But because we've been doing content on the internet for, 12 years now, it's in the beginning. I mean, it was like pulling teeth out trying to get followers and figuring, like, I was just messaging people like, hey, you should check out my stuff. Like, I think people forget those days. But because I've had to figure out how to evolve early, it's kind of the opposite game for them where they'll realize at some point like, hey, and I see as Charlie's taking her content and even Addison is taking her content to YouTube and they're growing it on Instagram and kind of figuring out the whole ecosystem of how it all plays together. That longer form is actually a really important piece of the puzzle for your audience to connect with you. It's just kind of a reverse way, like they shot
Yeah.
up to fame on TikTok. And so yeah, it's I think we are approaching it from different angles, but I think at the same time they can still lean in. I think is longevity with what they're doing, and there's just going to be some different content they're going to be supplementing, whether it's on, especially that longer form
Well,
piece.
you're right. It really is a different approach. Like you got your following on YouTube, and then you branched out to the shorter form content on social. They're starting with their platforms TikTok, and then they're going to YouTube to create longer form content, show their personality a little more. Instagram maybe show a 60-second clip instead of like a 10-second clip. So you're right. I mean, I think at the end of the day, talent always rises to the top. People think it's so easy to create a TikTok that goes viral. Hell no, right?
I
You've got to
thought
have something.
I thought Vine, that's what the feeling I had when I signed up for Vine. It was like 6 seconds long. And I was like, this is easy. My roommates, I lived in a house with 8 guys, and I was late to the game. I remember I was 9 months. I hadn't even heard about Vine because I'm kind of the creator that sits in my studio and I make, and I'm actually not a big consumer of besides YouTube. I watch a lot of YouTube, but besides that, I just sit and create. And so I didn't know about Vine. It came out. And when I heard like 6 seconds, why is that a thing? Like that sounds so easy. And I was like, what? People have 20 million followers? This whole step aside. And I start creating, and I'm like, whoa, this is like, you still need it's kind of like it felt more like stand-up comedy where you could try for years and years to build your routine or get that right joke, and it just isn't landing because you're missing it by a half second. And it was those nuances of the 6 seconds that I still even that is fun and that I love. But it really taught me in the beginning, you had to have that beginning, middle, end, and it reinforced like the story aspect. So it's not easy. And people I'm sure are looking at TikTok saying like, oh, a dance, I could do it. But there's magic to it. And you watch, they're doing things that I think, I don't know exactly what they're doing, but that I think a lot is in their eyes and their connections. And then also with their real life story. I think like even the fact that Charlie's leaned into talking about, hey, bullying, like I've been bullied, and she's not afraid to talk about that. That resonates deeper with an audience. And again, the people who are rising to the top have a level of authenticity where it feels like it's not perfect and they can be themselves. And I think that's what is going to grow their audience depth.
You look at the Vine stars, it was the same deal, right? David Dobrik kind of saw it coming and said, I got to create longer form content. I can only tell so much of a story. Like you mentioned stand-up comedians, right? How you have to set up a joke and hit the punchline, and timing's got to be right on in 6 seconds. That's not easy to do, right? It's not easy to tell a story in 6 seconds, right? But with YouTube, you can kind of breathe a little more. You can kind of step back and do it. I was wondering, like if we go back, so you were on YouTube, but you started out doing Final Cut Pro tutorials for like 4 years?
Yeah.
I bet people don't know that.
You went way back. That's my
way back.
Final Cut King days. Yeah, I started. That's how I paid through film school. I learned it from my dad. He was a stock trader, and he was doing these DVDs for years, like these DVD courses. And his model was provide tons of free, like amazing content, get them to learn a lot, and then later down the road, you can do DVDs. So I took that model and I did Final Cut Pro tutorials. And I was just screen capturing this computer, and I had like Final Cut Pro 4 or 5, and was just saying like, and it was what I was learning. Like at the time, if you look at it, if you Googled on YouTube, Final Cut Pro tutorials are on Google. Like I was the second rank because there was not many people doing it. And on YouTube, I was probably the first person doing it for screen recordings. Like it was so early. It wasn't like today where you go and you're like, how do I learn how to change my car tire? I'm going to go on YouTube. Like that wasn't the thing, Yeah. So I started that, and I loved meeting that filmmaking audience and talking to them and saying, this is what I'm learning. I'm learning a lightsaber effect. Here's how you can add it to yours. And that's where I stumbled upon my first viral videos, was the demo video for Jedi Kittens. Was, hey, like this is what I'm going to be making next week or something like that. Here's the 2 kittens. And it slowly went viral. And I was doing more effect-based stuff, like just saying, here's how you can do a hologram effect on your iPad, or wouldn't that be cool? And those were the videos, those demos were going viral, and that kind of caught my attention. And it was like, oh, people probably just want to watch story stuff. And I continued to do tutorials for many years. and I don't do it now, but I love teaching when I can. But ultimately, yeah, I've switched to these short form film things, and because I always wanted to direct and produce and write, and that was for me, doing a weekly video project just filled all those buckets.
Did you, well, after, you went viral a couple of times, did you start a new channel or did you kind of go to Vine first or like, what was the
No,
timeline?
I continued. I remember around Vine, when I started, I had like 300,000 YouTube subscribers,
Wow.
and I think Vine, once I went viral on Vine, I mean, that channel skyrocketed, the YouTube channel skyrocketed to, they funneled over about 1 million subscribers to YouTube. But yeah, I no longer have that. I have the channel, but I no longer post on the Final Cut King channel. It kind of died once Vine came out because Vine took all my time, and I kind of shut down the tutorial business. Decided that and because that filled the long term goal of making, kind of content for the mainstream audience. I've always wanted to have some niche in that, and I knew teaching, like I still do teaching, but it's on the side, or it's for a small group of people, talking more about general filmmaking and storytelling now. But I didn't jump back onto YouTube until Vine actually kind of died.
Oh, okay. And you describe yourself as an introvert, and you said it in the beginning of the interview, right? I feel comfortable here in my little safe space,
Right.
creating, like that's who you are.
Yep.
Was it hard to make that transition from just a kind of screenshot of you talking about, Final Cut Pro to actually where you're the star, where you're more of a star in the video, you're the main character. Was it
Yeah.
hard to make that transition?
Yeah. It's really uncomfortable, and the reason I did that was for two reasons. One was to help watermark the work. I knew there was no, like, we were just
Smart.
starting to get into bootleg copies, especially on Facebook at the time, and who told me that was Freddie Wong and Brandon Lash. I had lunch with them, and I had always looked up to their work. They were YouTubers who did visual effects, and they both said at our lunch meeting, like, "Hey, just keep yourself in front of the camera for a while. Just see where that takes you, because it'll help. It'll be that visual watermark. They'll be like, oh, that's the guy that does this." And I'm so thankful for that advice, because I'm comfortable with being in front of the camera now, but for many years it was just like a weird, like, I don't want to do this. I'll grab somebody else. But I kind of stuck with it because of that advice. But the other part was just practical. Like, when I was making vines, my roommates were all had day jobs. I was the only one at the house, and or there's me and another buddy, and sometimes I'd give him the camera and be like, hey, you film. Or they were actually in the videos in the beginning, or I would put it down on tripod, and just, it was 1 a.m. and everyone was asleep. Like, it was partly just a practical need. And then over the years, it got to a point where it'd be like, well, I'd love to go behind camera again, but it actually would just be kind of weird for the audience to just disappear.
Yeah.
Even though I guess it would play into the theme of magic, an illusion where I disappear forever. But
When you were in film school and your buddies, you're living in the house with all these other guys, did you ever have a real job, or did you go from film school? You were doing the YouTube stuff in there too, and then when you graduated, that was your career, right? You were making
I had
money
a bunch of weird, I did freelancing for many years, so I had a bunch of weird jobs. Like, I edited for this company that did a toilet. They put tiny cameras down toilet sewer systems to see where the clogs were, and I edited for the clients to show, like, oh yeah, you have this massive thing of sewage. Just look
Ew.
at all hair and poop. Like, I edited that footage for a long time.
You
And
edited shit,
yes,
literally.
that was my, like, I did a lot of freelance, and I did the classic, like, film a couple weddings, edit the weddings. I did it was all based on film, which I think was important for me to continue. Like, even I was always learning something through that. And actually I was making tutorials about that at the time. It'd be like, here's a sweet edit I learned at this wedding this weekend. So that was always kind of going back into the Final Cut King YouTube channel.
I write for Forbes, so businesses, I always touch on that. So now when I watch your videos, I don't really see brand deals. They're there maybe, but like I just watched a bunch of your videos yesterday, and I didn't
Yeah.
see any brand deals in there. I'm like, well, either you're making a ton on AdSense, or you're not doing them, or they're so slick they're in there somewhere, and I don't even see it. Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so our brand deals are, I mean, we're just really selective. We don't do as many as other creators. And that's just because we have the luxury of doing that because of the following. We can say, hey, we're just gonna do one this month, and that's fine. Yeah, no, AdSense is not how we make our money at all. It's really just doing a brand deal. But I think part of it is too, I mean, all the disclosures are there, but you know, they're really good fits for us. They're really natural, whether it's I'll do something with Lego and it's because I love the imagination. It's both for kids and adults, and everyone has Legos. I think on average, everyone has like 90 pieces in their home. So we really focus on brands that we, as much as we can. And it's easier now that we've been doing this for years that we know it's okay to say no. And it's not, you know, for many, around the time I was on Vine, I was like getting my first brand deals. And I was always wondering, this is going to end in like a year. And I have a year to kind of cash this out. And,
So you take every brand deal that comes?
yeah. And then over the, and that's just natural. I think when you're new to the, like this online, and the world was still new for the online creators. And over the years, it's kind of proven that you can, if you do it right, you can build longevity, and you can say no. And actually that by saying no, it helps build your brand even a little more clear and stronger to kind of funnel the right brand deals in. But you know, the reason you don't see them is we don't do a lot of there are some like YouTube sponsorships in there, or deals that'll be one-offs on our page, and those are fun, but we do these ones that are kind of different where it's like I'll be the Turkish Airlines safety guy for 2 years, and we'll take my style and we'll do the production and we'll do the creative. And we pitched many airlines this idea, and then Turkish is the one that they were like, hey, this is fun. Like we wanted two goals. One was like to make the shortest. So I'm happy to say at the time, this is like 4 years ago, we made the shortest safety video because they just drove me nuts. But also I was like, how about like the most entertaining? Like it's just, you can't stop looking because there's magic. So it's me like buckling my seatbelt magically, or me inflating the life preserver and showing you illusions on the plane as you're learning about safety. And so we do deals like that where unless you fly Turkish, you may not see it. But it's also special when that was running, you know, we'd get thousands of messages a day from fans who were like, oh my gosh, like it felt like a special moment for them. They're like, I didn't know you were on Turkish Airlines. Like, that's so cool. So we try to make them, you know, or like another one is you can go to the Apple store now and learn the jump cut for 90 minutes. And I teach it through video with the teachers. And that's essentially like kind of a brand integration partnership, but it's such a good fit where like, I feel like you're getting education. It's offered for free by Apple, and it's with a great company. So we try to work in those type of partnerships that are a little longer term, and really ideally give back a special moment to the audience.
You know, it's funny because I've been interviewed a ton of YouTubers and social media stars, so I kind of know the behind the scenes. I think a lot of people look at you and think, "Hey, that's just him and his camera, and you know, that's it, right?"
Yeah.
But you have like a 15-person team behind you. I think I read that somewhere.
Yeah, so yeah, we have about a little over a dozen people that work with me, and the fun part about that is we really are intentional about keeping it seeming like it's just me and the camera, or even just me and my wife filming. And part of that is because when people believe in the magic, they if it feels real, that helps them a little bit more. And once you say, oh, this is a highly produced thing, there's a massive crew on the side, there's a bunch of this and that, and you chalk it up to CGI, like you don't believe it anymore. And it's kind of like when I go to a Marvel movie, while I enjoy the stories, the actual amazement factor, like I'm not like, wow, he jumped off a building. I'm just like, of course he did, because he's Captain Marvel, and they have like a 100-person crew, and there's stunts, and there's a big budget. And I love that approach where it feels handheld. It feels like it's shot on a phone, even though, you know, half these things we shoot on a red camera, and we down convert the footage. Like all of that's really intentional, and it's part of the aesthetic.
Yeah, and we'll insert a clip here of the one you did with Logan. Was cool. I mean, you know, there's trickery going on, and you know,
is that the crossing the street one?
Yeah, for audio, he's crossing the street and kind of dodging and jumping over speeding cars going by. So you watch and you go, we know there's trickery obviously there, right? Logan's not on the freeway jumping over cars at 80 miles an hour,
right?
But it doesn't look like the Marvel look. It looks like it's filmed on a camera, or you know, maybe just a handheld thing or something.
Yep.
But we know that there's other people behind the scenes, but it doesn't look like that.
And I think the thing that throws people off too is we will throw in like we will shoot on an iPhone, and it helps it that much more where we really are running and gunning. So it's a perfect mix, and you never know which one is highly produced or which one is just actually almost so practical we filmed it. We've had a couple of those lately.
I was looking, I was, like I said, I watched a lot of videos. I was doing a lot of prep. You you seem like you're into like a hopping in the screen stuff now, like the pool table one, or objects magically turning into things like the frozen iPad. Like, do you go through different phases? Like, what are you into now? Like, what kind of content, or what's like the cool thing that you go, I just want to film a bunch of stuff like this?
Yeah, well, so the screen stuff, the UI interactions, I've always loved those, but it's made sense lately with all of the Zoom work from home theme. And so we were leaning into that, and it's also really easy to shoot compared. I mean, when I'm by myself, which I was the last like 2.5 months, 3 months of quarantine, I was like, how do I shoot this? Oh, I can just set up the camera. It's on tripod. I can reach in and grab stuff. So it's been nice to play on those themes though that everyone can relate to, whether it's like, oh, I really need a haircut. What if I was your barber and I lose connection and I cut your hair the wrong way.
If you were my barber, you'd be broke.
No, your hair definitely takes some work. I know people who are bald, and it actually is
It
like
takes a little work.
it takes more work than people give credit.
But are you into a certain, I mean, obviously practicality, right? You're home alone, so this is what you're doing because you do it on screen. Is there any new tech or things you're excited about that you can use for what you do, use for magic or tricks?
I'm really old school. I'm actually trying to I always want to make sure, and that's why I loved movies growing up, like Jurassic Park and Indiana Jones, where I you could just tell they were actually happening. You could tell they were doing the stunts, and it was practical, and that there was some sort of dinosaur they were interacting with, at least for the close-ups. And I'm always trying to pull back to make sure the tech is invisible, and that you're not. It's not about what cool camera we're using or what cool software we're using. It's really about how does it look to the audience and how does it feel real. So mine, I'm trying to go back to like the
Oh,
1900s where Charlie Chaplin and George Méliès was a great example of using matte paintings. Like they would put it in the frame and it would give them the perspective of there's a famous one with Charlie Chaplin. He's skateboarding or he's skating around and it looks like he's about to fall down a 4-story lobby or down a shopping mall. And but it was just a picture that was painted in the right perspective in front of camera. Or I did this trick recently where I wanted to duplicate something in a mirror, and we ended up building 2 rooms. Like it's a set. There's no mirror. It's just a frame, and we just built 2 rooms that are identical. That when you look through, it looks like a mirror, so that we could have a person on the other side, like doing the hand motions that matched me, that mirrored me. And there's zero editing involved, and I love the practical effects. So I'm trying to figure out how to get more closer to that because it's 100% real, and I'm convinced the audience can tell.
wow, that's interesting. And you kind of talking about, you've mentioned Charlie Chaplin a couple times, Buster Keaton, kind of these old school guys. You went to film school. It's easy to forget that you're really a filmmaker, right? You're a student of the genre. Who are some of your inspirations? Who are your guys that you go, man, I love how he shoots a movie, or I love what he does with these effects or whatever.
It's funny you mentioned that because yeah, I absolutely am a filmmaker at heart, but what I'm learning now, I mean, I didn't get from I sat through the history of cinema and we watched Charlie Chaplin, we watched I think it was The Tramp and or The Kid, and I was just sitting there like half asleep and I didn't get it. And it's funny now that I've done now since Vine, that's really when I got into it and like going back to these classic nods and realizing I was like, what am I doing? So I'm doing the jump cut, but that if you go back, like they were George Méliès and the Lumiere brothers were the first one to use. They were doing literal like jump cuts that appeared to be magic when they were on the Nickelodeons, and so but more modern filmmakers I absolutely love. I grab a little bit from everyone. Like I love the framing and movement of Wes Anderson, and I love his music choice, and
Great
I love
soundtracks.
great soundtracks. Actually, I have them on Spotify, so I can listen to. He has a huge range of his style of music that he puts in his films. Um, but I find myself finding it's like every week a different kind of inspiration, and I'll take just a little piece from people's work, and like lately going back to films like The Godfather, and just looking at the framing, taking tiny there's tiny little nods, and people can see it in our videos. They'll be like, "Oh, is this shot from like what? Did you reference this person?" And it's all in there.
Well, it's funny. You watch a movie differently than me and normal people, right? We watch a movie and we're more interested in what's going to happen next, right? What's going to happen to Michael Corleone now that this happened, right? But you're looking at it differently. You're looking
Nine,
at how they
I'm
get the
watching.
shot of Michael.
I'm watching 1917, and I'm counting the number of shot, like where the cuts are, where I think they are, and I'm like keeping track on my hand. And when we finished the movie, my wife's like, "Oh, that was an amazing movie," and I was like, "How many cuts did you count?" I think it's 43. Could be 42. I don't. What do you think about this one? And she's like, "Were you even like watching the movie?"
Can you watch a movie or that's just your DNA? You can't watch it
Some
normally.
movies I can, but I think it's actually probably for me a sign when I get really into the technicals that it's also a good movie. Like there's a lot of things like stimulating me. So I was just watching. There's three of them, and I was watching the second one, Midnight in Paris, not Midnight in Paris, Before Dusk. And I'm botching the name, but it's a Steven Soderbergh movie. And but like the movie is literally like only 6 or 7 locations, long 10-minute shots. And that movie, I thought about the filmmaking, but I was like the dialogue was so good, I got into it and fell in love. So I can totally watch movies, but yeah, there's always like a wait. The ones that always get me are the one takes for some reason. I'm like, I remember watching Pride and Prejudice recently. I was like, wait, we've been on Keira Knightley for like 5 minutes now. I don't think there's been a cut. Like, how are they? And then I get really into it. So, yeah, filmmakers. But I think that's what I love about great filmmakers. They're not showing off these techniques. They're using them to their advantage. And I think at the end of the day, whether you're making filmmaking or social media, the phone is just a tool, or the next software that comes out is just a tool to help tell a better story. I think it's frustrating when it becomes about just the technique or the tool, because that means you're definitely losing sight of that story, which is what is resonating. Like you just said, you're not watching a movie for the technical. So when I'm making these videos, I'm not trying to like trick the audience of like, what technique did Zack use this time? Was it a jump cut, or was it this or that? The story has to resonate. And it actually means the trick could be simpler than we think. I read a lot of books on practical magic, like the classical sleight of hand stuff or stage magic. And a common principle you see is like the magicians that start veering the wrong way are the ones that go after technique. They're trying to fool the other magicians, and they've totally forgot about the 95% of their audience, which is not magicians. It's just the layman, the regular person. So that's for me where I go back to what I try to remind myself and my team constantly is like, well, it's awesome that we just got on Reddit for this VFX post and people are trying to break it down. We got to remember like the audience was confused on that video, and we shouldn't have gone that complicated for the trick. Like that was us trying to fool other magicians.
Well, it's funny, like magic these days, you think of David Blaine, right? Nothing is more entertaining to watch than David Blaine on the street with a deck of cards.
Yes.
And he blows people's minds. How the hell did the card get in my shoe? Right
Yeah.
now, you can't even wrap your head around it. And it's not camera trickery or anything like that. He's doing something that we just can't see, or misdirection or whatever.
Yeah.
But I know what you mean. I saw an interview you did. I can't think of the host name, but he had a great quote. He said, if you're a chef, are you making a hamburger just because you can make a hamburger, or are you making a hamburger because someone wants a hamburger?
Mm-hmm.
And you can really apply that to anything. Am I interviewing you because I just find you interesting and I want to? That's part of it. Or am I doing it because people want to see you and what you have to say and talk about these topics that you usually don't talk about? And that kind of goes back to your thing about the effects. I'm sure there are directors and filmmakers who are trying to just use the latest tech just to use it. No one wants that hamburger, right? But he has it and he's going to make it just because he can.
Absolutely. I mean, it's it's like Jon Favreau, I think, is a great mix where he's pushing the boundaries. And even you saw Lucas do this, George Lucas with Star Wars, like they were pushing these boundaries of visual effects, but at the same time, they never lost sight of the story and they were never doing it just for the visual effects. They had these great stories. And when you have that mix, just time and time again, I've seen it's just a great payoff for the audience. And that's the goal of what I'm doing.
You know, you go back to, the story over and over again. And I remember, I think it was interviewing David Dobrik, and he was saying that, for those 6-second clips, those vines, he had a storyboard drawn out, and that would take, sometimes the filming was the easy part, where the creation of the idea and how do we implement it and how do we make it better and how do we give them a little twist at the end.
Yep.
Do you spend, like your process now, do you spend most of your time on that end and less on the filming, or how do you break up your process?
Over the years, we were always on set a lot, figuring out the actual trick mechanic, and then as we figure out the story is more important, that's where we spend a lot of time. And the trick mechanic still is really important. Like we want to innovate that and have it be fresh and new and feel different. And so there's ways we do that, but it's kind of both. In pre-production, though, we probably spend 85% of our time there sitting around. It could be storyboarding. It's usually just we grab our iPhones or a camera and jump to, whether it's in wherever we are, just can be in the lobby of the studio, and we block it out and kind of feel it out. And we watch it on the viewfinder. And that first couple of times you're watching it, that's when you realize, like, if I'll carry the camera around. I'll do this all the time, even with finished videos. I'll take it to team members around the studio and just say, "Hey, watch this." I won't give them any context. I might give them the caption name, and then they watch it. And if they don't laugh, it's like if I show 3 people and no one chuckles, I go back to probably a reshoot, or we cut at a different spot, or something wasn't hitting. But the goal is, it takes a lot of time to make these, to know that early on. So that's why we try to get to filming really quickly and just blocking. And when we're laughing around, throwing the, like, we make this hilarious, is like adding that one little wink at the end where it goes extra disastrous, or actually like that person comes back around and falls into the thing that you moved. And then when we find ourselves laughing around the storyboards or the viewfinder, that's usually when we know we have the right moment.
What are you into now? Like, who are the people to watch? Like YouTubers, filmmakers, like in your world, who are the ones you go, this guy or this girl is going to be somebody in a couple of years?
You know who I've been watching? She's on. I just follow. I'm not a huge social media person, but I'll send you some names actually, and you should. So Julie Noki is a Canadian comedian, and she's only got she's 9,000 followers on Twitter. But I just started following her, and I'm kind of like, she is the net. If she sticks with it, she will make it, and I will watch her she'll be on some sort of primetime comedy special, I'm sure, or comedy show in the future. But there's a lot of up and coming YouTubers like that who do sketches, and I'm just I'm waiting for SNL to swoop them up and do a thing with them at a different production level. But I'm and as far as what I love about YouTube is there's so much you can learn. And for me, I really stay in my filmmaking sphere. I'll tune into David Dobrik once in a while just to see what they're up to. I'll tune into kind of all the classic YouTubers, and I'll watch tech reviews by Marquez Brownlee, and we'll watch news from Franco. So I do my rounds there, but then I love using YouTube for inspiration. There's a channel literally called The Daily Dose of Internet, and I love that page because it's 3 minutes of joy and amazing stuff from the internet. And then I'll go back to, I kind of stay in my, there's a great channel called Every Frame a Painting, or the Nerdist or Nerd Writer. And I just stay in there, these video essays about filmmaking. And that's kind of where I live on my YouTube space.
Nice. Well, what are you promoting? I mean, we've talked for, 45 minutes. You haven't mentioned anything we need to do. You haven't sold us anything. What are you promoking? I mean,
wait till I get to the merch plug.
Give me the merch plug, man.
No, go to
fanjoy.com/Zack King.
Yeah, there's nothing we're promoting. I will say I have the coolest project I've gotten to work on. One of them is a book series. We did 3 books for middle grade readers. And part of the goal was I was hearing friends who were saying, my kids aren't reading, like they want to be on their phone. And this is right around the time, this is a couple of years ago, AR was starting to make its forefront into the market. So we're like, what if we made a book series which also answers a fan question, which a lot of kids, I'm amazed, and I have to remind myself that like 5-year-olds will come up and they'll want to know, they'll want to see me do a trick, and they'll want to know how I became magical. And I used to say like, yeah, here's the whole process. And they would walk away like, and then we were just at like Chipotle, right, eating, and they came up to me. They walk away looking like they're crying, and they're still like, I just revealed behind the scenes of Disneyland for them and said, no, Cinderella's on a smoke break back there. And so after doing that so many times, I was actually not enjoying the fan experience of those like 5-6-year-olds. That I was like, the book would be fun to write. That is a fictional story about Zack, a part of a magical family, and everyone has these cool magic abilities, but he hasn't found his magic yet. And so, but the AR feature we added is to help kids read, which we delightfully have found that it is working. It's not working the way we thought it was, but like you can literally scan like every page of the book. Oh, cool. And the art comes alive. And there's like 80 pages of art. This is the second book in the series, but you scan it, and it literally, like, it's super cool. All our animators and artists work on it here, where you scan it and it comes alive just like AR does on your phone. And there's sound effects, and there's games, and there's little things you can collect and hidden objects. We found kids like scan it really fast, like in 2 hours they're done. And then by the end, we put some pretty wild animations in, and you're just like, why is there this giant alligator popping out of the back page? Like, and so then they go back and read the story. They're like, what was the reason for all this madness that they end up seeing in the animation? So, and the treasure hunts really hook them too. But that's one of the fun. We try to bring the magical experience into everything we do, which is why we haven't done a lot, because it takes a lot of thought to do that. And so we're currently translating a lot of the books with the publishers in different languages.
So where can you get the books?
Amazon, Target, wherever books are sold, you can get them at Barnes and Noble, which I don't think is open right now, but yeah, you can get them wherever.
Very cool, man. Well, dude, thank you so much. And we'll insert all your social channels, but obviously people know where to find you because you're so big. But I really appreciate you sitting down with me. This was like super interesting. And it was definitely a different conversation than the TikTok people I've been sitting down with. So it's nice to talk to someone over 18.
Yeah, I just hit 30. So I've got 2 kids, and both are under 3 years old. And so, yeah, do you have kids or no?
I've got a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old. So similar deal.
Similar bucket. Yeah. Well, that's exciting. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Tom. It's good to meet you finally.
Yeah, thanks a lot, brother.
Of course.
Oh, wait, guys. And you got to be like a YouTuber now, right? Make sure you subscribe. I've got Lauren Gray coming up, and Brent Rivera, and you. I just did. That's 3 of the top 10 TikTokers in the world.
I think we're all in the top 10.
Yeah.
I think Brent is too. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. Your combined following is probably like a billion. Actually, real quick on that, I forgot to ask that. So you've had, I was looking at your TikToks, ones that have reached 1 billion. Is that number right, or is that a mistake? It's insane.
It's really, we've asked TikTok. We haven't heard what that number is yet. So I don't think views are necessarily views. They're obviously some sort of metric of impressions, but also the loops. I think they count a certain amount of loops in a unique period of time. I used to go really in depth on the analytics side. I was always checking whether it's YouTube or every analytics site we had access to. And over the years, I've just kind of stopped. I'll check them every day still, but like not to the extent I used. I might check in once a day just to make sure we're not hacked or something, and something's wrong. But over the years, there are people who, and you'll see this trend right now, even on TikTok. There's a lot of videos about how to strategize the algorithm and content. But at the end of the day, I think that's fine. And in the beginning, it's actually really important, because I did that for many years on YouTube. Like, that's how you had to learn the system when you're starting to help get. And so I have the luxury of not worrying about that as much. But over the years, I have learned that It's really not the place to start if you're talking about strategy and analytics more than you are the content and what you're enjoying making. And I think for creators, the advice I give is you got to find your own voice. You're not trying to find like the how the behind the scenes of the algorithm working or the voice of the AI. You got to find your own as a creator, and that's when you'll strike gold. And that's what also takes a lot of time to get to that point. But during that point, you're going to be slowly building an audience. So I always and they're also going to change. Like it's just stressful to keep up with that. Like what time of day, and it's just you know post when you think it's done and or right before done and move on to the next one.
It's funny, like the social media people and the marketers ruin social media, right? TikTok was fun, more fun a year ago, I think, than it is now because they didn't have all that figured out. There weren't tutorials on how to beat the algorithm, or, Wednesday at 1 o'clock is East Coast time is the best time to post. People
Yeah,
were kind of winging it. Where
yeah.
now the bigger the business becomes, the more advertisers get involved. It's like, okay, we need metrics, we need conversion rates, we need you to get this many views per
I'm
video.
always saying like, so what now? After you figured out the algorithm, what are you plugging into it? And it's if you're plugging in, if you haven't spent time developing that, you're going to be plugging in something that's probably not that well thought out or good and doesn't really seem, it might just seem like a bunch of copies of things that are out there. And so that's my worry is like once you figure that out, does it really help you? Maybe in the short term, but long term, it's going to be what is your content and how is it slightly what's your take on it?
Yep, absolutely. Well, that's good advice for all the aspiring TikTokers out there, man.
Yeah.
Well, thank
But
you, Eric. Thank
thanks
you
for
very
having me,
much.
Tom. I'm
Of
glad we
course.
finally got to meet. I had followed you on Twitter for all these years, and I always see your posts, and I'm glad we got to finally connect.
Yeah, virtually. It's a new
Yeah.
world, right? I wish you
Yes.
continued success, man. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Cool.
Later.